They told me the rules were for our own safety. Never fish after midnight, never follow the lights, and never ever look into the water when it whispers your name. I broke one rule. Now the Everglades won't let me leave. Welcome back to Dr. Snooze, where reality ends and nightmares begin. If you're into eerie tales, haunted places, and rules that should never be broken, you're in the right place. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, because what you're about to hear might just keep you up tonight. Now, let's dive into the story. It started with a job listing pinned to the corkboard at the corner gas station, a faded paper with rough edges and smudged ink, the kind of thing you'd ignore unless you were desperate. And I was. I had been couch surfing for months, barely scraping by doing odd jobs along the coast. And when I saw the words immediate opening, high pay, fishing boat crew needed, it felt like fate giving me a break. No name, no company, just a number and a note. Must be comfortable working in remote conditions. Must follow all posted rules. No exceptions. I called the number, and within 5 minutes I was hired. The man on the other end didn't ask much. He told me to meet him at the docks near Chokoloskee Island the next morning at 4 a.m. sharp. Said his name was Captain Evers, and that if I was late, I'd be left behind. His voice was dry, raspy, like he'd been talking through a mouthful of salt. I didn't ask questions. I packed my bag, borrowed my friend's rusty pickup, and made my way to the Everglades. The road was empty that night. Swamp stretched endlessly on either side, the darkness pressing against the headlights like something alive. I could hear the occasional hoot of an owl, or the splash of something large moving in the water just beyond the tree line. I'd heard stories about the Everglades, about the gators, the pythons, the lost people, but none of them prepared me for how heavy the air felt, like it was trying to choke out everything that didn't belong. When I got to the dock, I was the last one there. 4 other men stood in the mist, back straight, eyes dull. They didn't talk. They just stared at the boat. It was an old trawler, peeling paint, rust around the edges, and a crooked name stenciled on the side in faded black letters, The Widow's Wake. It looked like it should have sunk a decade ago. Captain Evers stood at the helm. He was a thin man, tall and wiry, with skin like old leather and eyes too pale to be normal. He didn't smile when he saw me. He just motioned me aboard. I climbed up and the boat creaked beneath me, like it groaned at the weight of one more soul. The others followed silently, moving like they'd done this hundreds of times. Maybe they had. As soon as we were all on board, Captain Evers handed out a laminated sheet to each of us. It had 5 rules printed on it in large red letters. 1. Do not fish before 6 a.m. 2. Never shine your light into the mangroves. 3. If you hear drums in the distance, turn off all engines and lights. Wait in silence. 4. Do not speak to anyone you see on the water. 5. If someone falls overboard after sunset, do not try to save them. At first, I thought it was a joke, but no one else laughed. The others folded the sheet and tucked it into their jackets like it was gospel. One guy, bald, maybe in his late 30s, gave me a look. It wasn't friendly. It wasn't hostile either, just empty, like he'd forgotten what it meant to care. Captain Evers started the engine, and the boat rumbled to life. We pushed off the dock and into the black water. The Everglades were nothing like the open sea. The channels twisted like veins through the swamp, choked with roots and shadows. Spanish moss dripped from low-hanging branches. The air buzzed with insects, and somewhere deeper in the glade something howled. Not an animal sound, more like a man in pain, too far away to help, too close to forget. We sailed in silence for nearly an hour. No one spoke. No one smoked, just the hum of the engine and the splash of water against the hull. At precisely 6 a.m., Evers gave a short nod. That was our cue. The men moved quickly, dropping lines, checking nets, getting to work like machines. I followed, copying what I saw, trying to pretend I belonged. The fish came fast. Catfish, bass, tilapia, all fat and heavy, flopping into bins. It was good work. For a while I forgot about the rules. I forgot about the eerie feeling that had followed me since I stepped onto the boat. But the Everglades have a way of reminding you that you're not in control. It started with the fog. Just after noon, a thick mist rolled in, too fast, too heavy. We were in open water, but suddenly we couldn't see past 10 feet. The air grew colder, which didn't make sense in the Florida heat. Evers killed the engine. The others stood still, eyes darting, listening. That's when we heard it. Drums, faint at first, like something deep in the water or far off in the mangroves. A slow, steady beat that pulsed like a heartbeat. Boom, boom, boom. I reached for my flashlight instinctively, but the bald man slapped it out of my hand before I could turn it on. He hissed through his teeth, eyes wide with terror. No lights, no noise, he whispered. We stood in silence. I could feel sweat dripping down my back despite the chill. The drums grew louder, closer. The fog around us swirled unnaturally, thickening until the boat felt like it was floating through cotton. Then it stopped. The fog vanished like a curtain being pulled back. Sunlight poured in again. The air warmed. The drums were gone. No one said a word. We just went back to fishing like nothing had happened. But the mood had changed. Even the fish seemed more frantic, flopping harder, eyes bulging like they knew something we didn't. Later that evening, as the sun dipped low and the sky turned orange, I took a moment to lean over the edge and breathe. That's when I saw it. A boat, small, wooden, drifting just ahead of us. There was a man in it. Or, at least I thought it was a man. He wore a long coat and a hat that shadowed his face. He stood perfectly still as the boat moved without paddles, just gliding across the water. I raised my hand to wave, instinct, really. But before I could, Captain Evers grabbed my arm and yanked me back so hard I nearly fell. Rule 4, he snapped. Don't speak. Don't wave. Don't even look. I blinked. When I looked back, the boat was gone. No ripple, no sound, just empty water. That night, after we anchored near a narrow channel surrounded by thick mangroves, we took turns sleeping in shifts. I was paired with a guy named Luis, who hadn't spoken to me all day. As the others slept below deck, we sat on crates watching the dark. It was around midnight when Luis leaned over and whispered, "First time?" I nodded. He didn't smile. "You'll get used to it, or you won't. Either way, don't break the rules." "What happens if you do?" I asked. He didn't answer right away, just stared into the trees. Last guy who talked to the water people jumped overboard the next night, smiling, singing some old hymn. We never found the body. I didn't sleep at all. And somewhere just past the mangroves, I swore I heard drumming again. The next morning arrived like a foggy memory. I hadn't really slept, just drifted in and out while Luis sat stiff beside me, eyes never leaving the dark water. At some point, I must have dozed off, because when I blinked awake, the sun was just breaking through the trees, and the others were already moving. We were somewhere deep in the glades now. I had no idea how to get back. That realization hit me hard. No landmarks, no radio, no cell signal. Just water and endless mangroves in every direction. It was like the world had vanished behind us the moment we left the dock. Captain Evers stood at the bow, staring into the mist like he was waiting for something. He said nothing, just nodded at us to start the morning routine. At exactly 6 a.m., the lines went into the water. I tried to shake off the night's weirdness and get back to work. The others didn't seem shaken. They moved with the same stiff rhythm, barely acknowledging each other, like they were just surviving. My net was heavier than usual. I leaned over the side and pulled it up, expecting another load of catfish or maybe a fat bass. Instead, I froze. Inside the net was a chunk of something pink and glistening. Meat. Human-looking meat. It was shaped like a forearm, but stripped of skin, muscles gleaming in the light. My stomach turned. I looked around, expecting someone to react, to freak out, but no one did. Luis walked over, looked at the thing once, then cut the net loose with a knife and watched it sink into the water. "Sometimes the swamp gives back," he said coldly. "Don't ask questions. Keep working." I wanted to vomit. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. Somehow, that felt like the worst thing I could do, so I picked up another net. The rest of the morning passed in that same surreal haze. The fish weren't biting much, but the ones we caught looked wrong. Eyes cloudy, gills torn open like something had already fed on them. One of them was missing its entire lower half, still flopping in the bucket like it didn't know it was already dead. It wasn't until just after noon that the screaming started. It came from deep in the trees, echoing across the water. High-pitched, human, desperate. I dropped what I was doing and spun toward the sound. "Help, please! Somebody, please!" A woman's voice. The others didn't even flinch. Luis grabbed my shoulder before I could move. "Don't," he said. "Rule 4. "But she's not." The voice came again, louder, closer. Then a splash, like someone had fallen in. I looked toward the mangroves and saw her. A woman stumbling through the water, maybe in her 20s, soaked and bleeding from one arm. Her shirt was torn, her eyes wild with terror. When she saw our boat, she screamed again. "Please, help me, they're coming!" My heart dropped. Every instinct screamed to help her. She was only about 20 feet away now, but the others just stood there. "She's not real," Captain Evers said flatly. "Don't speak. Don't move." I couldn't believe it. I looked at Luis, hoping he'd crack, that he'd jump into action. But he just shook his head. "She's a test," he whispered. The woman reached the edge of the mangroves, barely able to keep her head above water. Then she smiled. It wasn't the smile of someone being rescued. It was wide. Too wide. Her mouth opened further than it should have, tearing at the corners. Her eyes rolled back, revealing black sockets crawling with something, moving. She opened her mouth and let out a sound that wasn't a scream. It was like metal grinding on bone, a deep, wet shriek that echoed off the trees. Then she vanished beneath the surface. I stepped back, heart hammering. The water where she'd been bubbled violently, then calmed. Captain Evers didn't say a word. He just turned back to the wheel. We move. By sunset, we were anchored near a different part of the swamp. The air smelled worse here, like sulfur and rot. The trees leaned in closer, twisted like they were trying to whisper secrets. That night, I couldn't bring myself to sleep. The rules rattled in my head over and over again, especially the last one. If someone falls overboard after sunset, do not try to save them. I didn't know why it haunted me so much, until it happened. We were all on deck finishing the last haul of the day. Jackson, the youngest guy on the crew, maybe mid-20s, was hauling a tangled net out of the water. It was stuck on something. He leaned too far, lost his balance, and toppled overboard with a splash. Everyone froze. "Jackson?" I called out, but no one else moved. Luis was staring straight ahead. His jaw was clenched. "Help him!" I shouted. "He's gone," someone muttered. I leaned over the rail and scanned the dark water. I could see his hands splashing, reaching for the side. He wasn't far, barely 10 feet. "Grab my hand!" I yelled, stretching out. Then Jackson screamed. It wasn't a scream of drowning. It was agony, terror. His body jerked back like something had grabbed him from below. I saw claws, dozens of long, thin, bone-white fingers coiling around his waist. Something pulled him under, fast, violently. And then, silence. No bubbles, no trace. He was just gone. I stared at the water, stunned. Captain Evers lit a cigarette and muttered, "You try to save them, you go with them." I couldn't look at anyone. The crew just picked up Jackson's tools and went back to their stations like it was a minor inconvenience. No mourning, no prayer, no conversation, just silence. Later that night, I sat alone at the edge of the boat, staring into the water. Luis sat down beside me. "They don't even let us speak their names after dark," he said. "It draws them back." "What are they?" I whispered. "The ones in the swamp?" He shook his head. "We don't know. All we know is they hate light, they hate sound, and they hate when we break the rules." I turned to him. "Why stay? Why work here at all?" He didn't answer right away, just pulled up his sleeve. His arm was covered in scars, dozens of them, bite marks, claw marks. One looked like someone had carved letters into his skin, and they never healed right. "I left once," he said. "Didn't last a week. They came for me, found me in a hotel outside Tampa, took my little brother instead." He stared out into the trees. "So I came back." I didn't know what to say. Suddenly the boat shifted under us. A low groan echoed from below deck, like something heavy brushing against the hull. Luis went pale. "What was that?" I whispered. He stood quickly. "Get inside, now!" I followed him, heart thudding. Just before I stepped into the cabin, I looked back at the water. Something was circling the boat. Something big, and glowing eyes, 4 of them, blinked up at me from beneath the surface, then disappeared. I didn't sleep at all that night. Even after we locked ourselves inside the cramped, rusted crew cabin, I could still feel them circling the boat. Whatever they were beneath us, moving, watching, waiting. The sounds didn't stop either. Every few minutes, a soft thump against the hull, followed by long, dragging noises, like claws or fingers scraping against metal. The others pretended not to hear it. Even Luis lay back on his bunk, eyes open, refusing to speak. It was like acknowledging the sounds would invite them in. By morning, the noises had stopped, but the air felt heavier, as if the swamp itself was pressing down on us. We emerged slowly, one by one, silent, grim-faced. No one mentioned Jackson. No one said a word about the glowing eyes I'd seen. Captain Evers was already at the helm, lighting a cigarette with shaking fingers. He looked tired, older than he had the day before. We pulled anchor and started moving through a narrow channel that twisted between walls of green and gray. Moss dripped from branches like rotting curtains. The water beneath us was unnaturally still, reflecting the boat like a black mirror. At exactly 6 a.m., we started to fish again, like nothing had happened. This time, I couldn't fake it. My hands shook. Every net I pulled felt like it might hold something else, a body, a piece of one, or worse. Luis must have noticed. He passed me a thermos of coffee and muttered, "You're doing fine. You're still alive. That's more than some." I forced a nod, but the words rang hollow. Then we hit something. The boat lurched violently, sending 2 crew members stumbling into the railing. A horrible grinding noise came from below deck. Evers cursed and cut the engine. "We hit a submerged root," he said, but he didn't sound convinced. The crew scattered, checking the sides and bottom with long poles. I joined Luis near the rear, trying to see through the water, but the water was too dark, too thick, like it was hiding something. Suddenly, one of the older crewmen, Frank, gasped and pointed into the trees. We all turned. There, hanging from a branch just above the waterline, was a rope. And from that rope dangled a man's body, bloated, pale, rotting. His eyes were missing and his mouth was stretched open in a silent scream. His arms dangled limply, and something had carved symbols into his chest, deep, jagged letters I didn't recognize. Captain Evers said one word, "Don't look," but I already had, and now I couldn't stop. Something about the body, it wasn't dead, not completely, it was twitching, barely, but I saw it. One hand flexed, a foot twitched. The body spun slowly on the rope, and I swear, it turned to face me. It was Jackson. His jaw opened. No sound came out, but I could feel what he was trying to say. Run. I stumbled back, my breath caught in my throat. Luis grabbed me and pushed me away from the railing. "He's gone, man. That ain't him no more." I tried to speak, but a sharp crack interrupted me. The rope snapped. The body fell into the water with a splash and didn't resurface. Captain Evers revved the engine without saying a word. We moved faster than usual after that. No more fishing. No more talking. Evers just guided us through the winding swamp until we came upon a small island of cypress trees. Their roots jutted from the water like claws. "We stop here," he said. "They're restless today." The crew set anchor again. Some of the guys started fixing the net. Others cleaned the catch, though nobody really seemed hungry. I just sat on the deck, staring into the trees. Luis came over and sat next to me again. He always seemed to know when I needed to hear the truth, even if it terrified me. "Back in the day," he began, "there used to be more of us. We'd fish deeper into the glades. We didn't have rules. We didn't think we needed them." "What changed?" I asked. "One of the guys, Marco, he broke something. We don't know what exactly. Maybe it was a promise, maybe a ritual, maybe just dumb luck. But he went into the mangroves one night, didn't come back." Luis looked at me, eyes hollow. The next day, we found our nets filled with pieces, blood, bones, things with teeth marks that didn't match any animal. Ever since then, we follow the rules, and they mostly leave us alone. "Mostly?" He nodded slowly. "Sometimes they take someone anyway, a warning, a reminder." A heavy silence settled between us. I looked out into the trees again. That's when I saw the lights, dozens of them, flickering, dancing between the trunks. They were soft at first, like fireflies. Then they grew brighter, steadier, eyes watching us. "Get below," Captain Evers barked. We obeyed instantly. Just as we got inside, the sky outside turned gray. Thunder rumbled in the distance. A storm was coming. We braced ourselves inside the cabin, latching everything shut. I huddled in the corner, knees to my chest, listening to the water slap against the hull harder and harder. Then came the knocking. Not from the door, from underneath. Knock, knock, steady, rhythmic, like someone asking to come in. The others didn't move, didn't breathe. The knocking grew louder, closer, then a voice. "Let me in." It sounded like Jackson. "Please, it's cold. I don't want to die out here." I closed my eyes, covered my ears. "Please, I don't want to be alone." I felt it in my bones. That thing wasn't Jackson. Suddenly, the storm hit full force. Rain hammered the boat. Wind howled through the trees. The knocking stopped, but the air felt electric, like something was about to snap. And then the hatch above us, sealed shut, rattled violently. Scraping, clawing, tearing. Captain Evers stood in front of it, shotgun in hand, staring upward. "If it gets through," he said quietly, "nobody runs. You understand me?" We all nodded, even though our legs were shaking. The hatch stopped rattling. The storm faded, just like that. We waited an hour before emerging. Everything outside was soaked. The trees looked burned, like lightning had kissed every one of them. The water was steaming, and the lights were gone. But deep in the trees we heard a new sound. Drums. Boom, boom, boom. Only this time they weren't far away. They were coming closer. We didn't move for almost 15 minutes. Nobody said it out loud, but we were all frozen in place, ears straining to make sense of the low, steady boom, 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 echoing through the trees. The drums weren't just sounds anymore. They had weight. They sank into your bones, crawled under your skin, and made the world feel thinner, more brittle. Captain Evers was the first to act. He lit a cigarette even though his hands were shaking badly. "Full silence," he said. "Lights off, engines off, not a word." He didn't need to say it twice. We each took our positions on deck, crouched low, eyes wide. Luis passed me a dull knife and mouth just in case. I didn't ask what for. The boat floated silently as the drums grew louder. They didn't sound like any musical rhythm. It was wrong, offbeat, unpredictable, like something banging on hollow wood and wet flesh at the same time, the kind of sound that could drive you mad if you listened too long. Then they stopped. Dead silence. The water was glass still. No wind, no birds, just the sound of our own breathing. And then a boat. It appeared out of the mist as if it had always been there. No splash, no engine, no wake, just drifting slowly toward us. It was wooden, old, blackened like it had been burned and patched together with bones and vines. And at the center of it stood something tall, thin, and covered in a wet burlap sack. A hooded figure. You couldn't see its face. Just the dripping outline of a body wrapped in the sackcloth, arms too long, fingers wrapped around the rim of the boat like a spider testing its prey. No one moved. It passed us slowly, brushing the water beside our boat, close enough to touch. It didn't look at us, but we felt it looking. I was shaking. Every part of me screamed to run, to dive into the water and swim for shore. But the rules were clear. Do not speak to anyone you see on the water. Not even this. Once the boat was out of sight, the fog followed it, like a curtain pulling away. And just like that, it was morning again. The sun peeked through and the birds returned, singing like nothing had happened. Evers stood up and whispered, "That was a warning." "Warning for what?" I finally asked. Luis answered without looking at me. "Someone broke a rule." We spent the rest of the day pretending things were normal, fixing nets, cleaning gear. Captain Evers said we'd fish again tomorrow once the spirits had settled. I didn't ask what that meant. That night, we anchored again, this time deeper in the swamp than ever before. The trees here were thicker, closer. The water smelled like mold and old blood. As the sun dipped, Evers gathered us all and finally said what we'd all been dreading. Someone talked to it. Nobody said a word. I don't know who, and I don't care, but they know, and now they're coming. He pulled a worn leather pouch from his jacket and passed it around. Inside were tiny charms, twisted bone, teeth, and what looked like dried snake skin tied into knots. He told us to wear them. "They won't save you," he said, "but they might confuse what's hunting." That night, we slept in shifts again. I took second watch with Luis. The air was thick with tension. No breeze, no insects, just a stillness so deep it made your ears ring. "Do you believe in hell?" Luis asked suddenly. I looked at him. Not really. He didn't smile. Me either. Not until I came here. He pointed to the trees. "Whatever's in there, it doesn't just kill. It keeps things, pieces of them, memories, voices, faces. That's why we don't save anyone after dark. That's why we never shine the lights." He paused. "Because the things you see at night, they used to be us." I didn't respond. I didn't want to. Around 3 a.m., something changed. The smell hit us first, rot and brine. Then the sound, scraping like nails on wood. Then the lights. Dozens of pale blue orbs floating above the water just beyond the mangroves. Not like the eyes I saw before. These were fainter, more frantic. Moving in circles, darting between trees. Then came the whispering. Soft, like wind through grass. But getting louder. I couldn't make out the words. Neither could Luis. But something about it made our teeth ache. Suddenly a loud bang rocked the boat. Something had slammed against the hull. We scrambled to our feet, more bangs from every direction. Then, a voice. He broke the rules. It was deep, cold, not male, not female, just wrong. Louis gripped his knife. Inside, now. We ran into the cabin. The others were already awake, weapons in hand, most of them useless. Rusted hooks, machetes, a bat with nails through it. Evers was loading his shotgun. They want the one who spoke. Spoke to what? I demanded. Did you speak to it? I wanted to say no, but I remembered, back when we saw the woman in the water, when I whispered, "Are you okay?" before I knew what she was, before Louise stopped me. That was enough, wasn't it? I didn't answer. Louise stepped in front of me. We protect our own. Evers didn't argue. He just chambered a shell and aimed at the door. Then the hatch above exploded. Wood shattered inward. A cold gust of wind blew through the room. Something dropped down through the hole. Not a creature, not a man. It was a shape. Tall, thin, made of shadows. Its limbs were too long. Its head dragged against the ceiling. It smelled like death and old rain. It turned its head to me. Its face was blank. Skin stretched tight, no eyes, no mouth. But I heard it, in my head. You called me. I couldn't move. Louise screamed and swung the knife, slashing across its torso. It didn't react, just turned to him slowly, as if noticing a mosquito. Then it reached out and touched his chest. Louise gasped and fell. Not backward, not down. He just crumpled in on himself, collapsed like a deflated suit, gone. The thing turned back to me. I raised the knife, it leaned in, and then Evers fired. The sound was deafening. The creature staggered back, and smoke pouring from its chest. It didn't bleed, just oozed black smoke. Evers fired again, then again. The shadow wailed an awful screech like metal tearing through flesh. It grabbed the ceiling and pulled itself back through the hole in one unnatural motion. Silence followed. The crew sat frozen. Evers dropped the shotgun. His hands were bleeding. That'll buy us one night. One? I said. That thing, what was it? He didn't answer. Just looked at Louise's empty clothes on the floor. Then whispered, "We leave tomorrow." I don't remember falling asleep, but I remember waking up. The swamp air was thick and damp, clinging to my skin like a second layer. A dull pain throbbed in the side of my head where I had hit the railing during the struggle. The sun was rising behind the mangroves, spilling golden light across the boat's deck. But it felt wrong, too quiet, too still. My first instinct was to check for Captain Reeves, but the deck was empty. So was the cabin, so was the engine room, and the logs, every paper, every journal, every map, gone. The boat felt abandoned, as if I had dreamed the night before, but I knew I hadn't. The blood was still on the floor. My clothes were still damp from falling into the water. And the rules list? It was nailed back to the mast, this time with a new line scribbled in blood-red ink beneath the others. There is no leaving. I stumbled back, my breathing turning ragged. I had to get off the boat. I had to report this. I didn't care if the locals thought I was crazy. Something lived in the Everglades, and we were feeding it, or maybe worshiping it. I tried the emergency radio first, even though I knew it wouldn't work. Static. I considered jumping into the water and swimming for shore, but the Everglades were unforgiving. You didn't just go for a dip. There were gators, snakes, things with too many eyes. Still, staying felt worse. I was tying a length of rope around my waist when the motor roared to life behind me. I turned to see Captain Reeves standing at the helm. Only it wasn't him. His eyes were black, glossy. His veins bulged like cords beneath his skin, twisting in unnatural patterns across his arms. His voice came out deeper, rasping through a mouth that didn't quite move right. "You broke the rules, son," it said, in a voice that tried too hard to sound like the captain's. "I didn't break any," I choked out. "I followed them, I swear. You brought curiosity. You brought defiance. You tried to leave." The boat lurched forward, cutting through the narrow channels of water with unnatural speed. I grabbed the rail to steady myself as we tore past mangroves and shadowed alcoves. The landscape blurred, but I noticed something strange. Bodies hanging in the trees. Not rotting corpses, but people suspended midair, unmoving. Eyes open, watching. Some I recognized, other crewmates, tourists, fishermen. Their mouths hung open in frozen screams. None blinked. "They broke the rules too," the voice said. "But you have something different. You're not just meat, you're memory." The boat stopped suddenly, throwing me forward onto the deck. We were in a wide clearing surrounded by black water, the air reeking of sulfur. In the center was a mound of roots and bones like a shrine, pulsing with a faint, sickly red glow. "You'll feed it," the voice said behind me, "or you'll become part of it." I backed away as the knot captain began to change. His skin cracked and sloughed off like wet bark. Underneath, something monstrous emerged, its form a collage of human features like it had worn too many people and couldn't remember which was which. Eyes blinked from its chest. A second mouth opened beneath its ribcage. I ran. Where, I didn't know. There was no shore, no trail, just endless swamp. Branches clawed at me. Insects swarmed my face. I fell more than once, scraping my hands and knees on submerged roots. Behind me, I could hear the thing moving, slithering, dragging, whispering. "You can't leave, you're marked." I tripped over a fallen log and landed hard in the mud. Something sharp pierced my thigh and I cried out. I reached down, expecting a branch or shell. It was a bone. Human. That's when I saw the others. Dozens of skeletons half submerged in the muck. A graveyard beneath the trees. And beside it, a boat. Old, rusted, but intact. A faded nameplate read the Miriam. I scrambled toward it, using all my strength to pull myself inside. The keys weren't in the ignition. I searched the compartments. Nothing. Then I saw a figure sitting in the corner of the cabin. A man, dried and mummified, clutching a soaked journal to his chest. His jaw was unhinged, and a silent scream was frozen on his face. I took the journal. Flipping through it, I saw entries written in a shaky hand. Day 1, joined the crew. Captain Reeves seems off, but the money's good. Day 7, woke up hearing things. There are rules. No one will explain. Day 12, Benny disappeared. No one blinked. Something's wrong. Day 19, the Everglades are alive. Not metaphorically, really alive. Day 25, I tried to leave. They found me. They always do. The last page had only 3 words, etched deep into the paper with such force the page tore. It wants memory. That's when I understood. This thing, whatever it was, it didn't just kill. It fed on recollection, on stories, on the fear that brewed inside the human mind. And I was full of it. My breath caught as I heard the sloshing footsteps behind me. It had followed. I had one shot. I grabbed the flare gun from the wall mount and stumbled outside. The thing loomed in the mist, its many eyes gleaming. "I know your rules," I shouted, "but I have one of my own." It paused. I raised the flare and fired. The flare exploded midair with a deafening crack, lighting the canopy in red flame. The creature recoiled, screeching, its skin blistering under the unnatural light. It fled into the darkness, howling. I didn't wait. I ripped out the starter cables of the boat and began hot-wiring it the way I'd seen Reeves do when we lost keys one drunken night weeks ago. The motor roared to life. I pushed the throttle and took off, not looking back. I didn't stop until the trees thinned and the horizon opened into blue sky and open marsh. I found a ranger station hours later, half mad, bleeding, barely conscious. They didn't believe me, not fully, but they found the flare shell and they found the journal. That was 6 months ago. I don't fish anymore. I don't go near the water. But sometimes when I close my eyes, I see the rules nailed to the mast. I remember Rule 1 the most. Never ask about the lights in the trees. Because now I see them everywhere, even outside my window, and I know I never really left. Another day, another nightmare from the dark corners of the world. If you're still breathing, hit that like button before the rules change again. Share this tale with someone who thinks they'd survive the Everglades. And don't forget to subscribe to Dr. Snooze. New horrors drop every single day. Till tomorrow, stay alert, stay alive, and never forget, strange rules exist for a reason.